right to Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst, live in Tel Aviv, Israel, with the latest on the Iran deal. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Overnight, President Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran, formally marking the ceasefire extension with the Iranian regime. He was in France's Versailles Palace alongside French President Emmanuel Macron. And we know that Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, was the one responsible for signing the document from the Iranian capital of Tehran. Now, earlier in the day, President Trump talked about what this agreement means and what happens if it isn't enforced.
It's a memorandum of understanding. If it doesn't get done in 60 days, that's all right. We go back to bombing. You know, I don't want to do that because it's so good. But we might have to, because we're never going to let them have a nuclear weapon. But they've agreed not to, and you'll see that very clearly in the agreement. We're not putting up money. Only if they're doing things right. If they're doing things right, if people want to invest, they can invest.
On Wednesday, a U.S. official read the agreement to reporters. Within this deal includes an immediate end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, respect to sovereignty and territorial integrity of Iran. The final deal must be reached within 60 days, but there is a possibility for an extension if those negotiations are going well. Now, the United States will fully end the naval blockade of Iranian ports. The Iranians will ensure safe shipping passage in the Strait of Hormuz and no charge of tolls for at least 60 days. There is going to be a reconstruction plan with many Gulf allies. This is going to be discussed in the days ahead. And the U.S. will agree to end many sanctions on a schedule. This is going to be a tiered system. The Iranians aren't going to receive all of this relief at once. It will be performance-based. And some of those frozen funds will be available for use to the Iranian regime if they are making progress toward ending their nuclear program. Now, on the issue of negotiations, Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Khalibaf, and top negotiator, said this.
The difference between the negotiations now and the previous periods is that today the flag of victory is in the field, which both enemies and friends have admitted. Our people saw the glory of the armed forces too, even though they were against the well-equipped enemy.
This is very much wait and see. Many details still have to be discussed in relation to Iran's nuclear program. They have made commitments in this Memorandum of Understanding, and now Iran's top negotiators will meet with American mediators to try and work out a path forward. We know the Qataris are involved in this process to actually make the schedule of when these meetings are going to take place. Guys?
Yeah, this is wait and see for sure, Trey. And I think that the question over success of this deal all boils down to if Iran cares more about strengthening its economy or if it cares more about keeping its nuclear program. Given what you know about this regime, how would you answer that question?
Yeah, it's an important question, and the Iranians will have to make that decision. But the president yesterday from France made a few important points. He is willing to have the Iranians see sanctions relief if their performance on the international stage is positive. He's willing to let them have some ballistic missiles if their performance is positive. And so, again, this is all performance-based. And if the Iranians are unwilling to make those concessions, the president indicated he is willing to resume military action against the Iranian regime. And so these next 2 months are really going to be critical, and we can expect a lot of detailed discussions as it relates to Iran's highly enriched uranium that is buried deep underground, getting rid of those centrifuges, and also the other enriched material that isn't at such a pure form of uranium, but also could be reverse engineered if the Iranians in the future wanted to increase the purity. And so all of these things have to be addressed. And again, it's Iran's behavior in the region. This is a memorandum of understanding. It is not the final deal between the United States and Iran. And really, this should be looked at as an extension of the ceasefire agreement. It's the president giving the Iranians a chance to change their behavior and normalize ties on the international stage. And if they're unwilling to do so, the president says he will resume the bombing campaign.
All right, Trey Yingst live for us in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. Let's bring in Chief Strategist of the Middle East Forum and former U.S. Army Special Forces member Jim Hanson. Jim, thanks for being here with us today. A lot of opinions about this deal rolling in, whether or not it will be successful. Ted Cruz has one. He's skeptical. He told The Hill, history teaches that giving billions of dollars to theocratic lunatics who want to murder us is not a good idea. I think the president is receiving some very poor advice on this deal. How do you view what the president, what the United States and Iran have entered into?
This is step one. This is not the final deal, as Trey mentioned. And to talk to Senator Cruz, nobody is giving them billions of dollars until they have done the thing the war set out to accomplish. They must give access to all of their nuclear facilities and destroy the enriched uranium that they have to our satisfaction. This does not, we're not going to play, oh, presto Idaho, don't go look over here, you can't look over here. We need full access to everything. We need to witness the destruction of the nuclear material, and then and only then does any forward-moving monetary incentives occur. And that's a pretty big step. If they're willing to do that, then the war was worth it.
Yeah, and point 8 of this memorandum is where it states that the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop a nuclear weapon. And President Trump has said a few times now that he added that word procure into the deal because he wanted to make sure that Iran couldn't buy a nuclear weapon along with developing it. But that line that Iran does not want a nuclear weapon is something that the regime leaders have said time and time again, when clearly all signs point to the fact that they do. So what do you think about this? Do you think that the decision makers now will actually fully agree to denuclearize over the next 60 days?
I don't think their desire for a nuclear weapon has changed. It's a game changer for anyone. Any nation that gets a nuclear weapon then has leverage on the entire rest of the world. But we made it too painful for them to continue down the path they were on to developing one. And that's important, destroying all of their conventional military capabilities, but also the blockade shutting off all oil revenue for almost, more than a month plus, put them in a position where their economy was about to crash and burn. They can't afford that. Now, President Trump has taken domestic political considerations into, account, and he wants the oil to flow and gas prices to drop because once he's through the midterms, he's got even more flexibility if the Iranians do not decide to abide by their end of the deal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Everybody talks about what the president is going to do leading up to the midterm elections. There's also that 2-year period after the midterms to consider. And you mentioned revenue. There's also the unfreezing of funds as part of this deal. Here's what the president said about that yesterday.
We have taken a lot of their money, and we have their money. We have taken their money. It's not our money. It's their money. And we froze it. At a certain point in time, I guess we're going to have to give it back. If we didn't give it back, nobody would ever invest in the dollar again.
And Iranian officials, though, have estimated they could generate about $10 billion over just a 60-day period from oil exports. How do you think that Iran will use that money? The obvious concern is rebuilding their military and terror proxies.
The difficulty for them is they don't have any factories to build their military back. All of that was turned into rubble. And that puts them on a much longer track to try and rebuild anything. And we'll be able to see if they're doing that. We have such visibility into what they're doing. We can still fly drones. We still have satellite coverage of everything they're doing. If they go down the path of rearming in a way that's dangerous to the future of the region, or doing anything at all related to their military or nuclear program that we don't like, we can end whatever things we've already agreed to and resume the pain. But right now, we're offering them a chance to see, do you want to actually do some negotiation? Do you want to rejoin the community of nations, and have some prosperity and security? Or are you going down the path of destruction? Yeah. They have a chance to change their ways and see what happens.
They have a chance. 60 days from June 17th, which was yesterday, is August 16th. A whole lot or very little can happen in that time frame. We will all wait and see. Jim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.